Billionaire single father Daniel Holloway had always wondered if anyone could love him without the wealth, status, or public image. Seeking answers, he took his two sons to a casual dinner, dressed in old jeans from a secondhand shop. No chauffeur, no show, just a weary father and his famished kids. But things took a turn when Emma Clark, looking for someone else, mistakenly sat down at their table. Daniel, choosing not to correct her, let her be. What began as a simple mistake turned into a night filled with laughter, spilled drinks, and the most genuine conversation he had experienced in years. Emma had no clue who Daniel was. She only saw a man trying his best for his children. But as secrets like his do, the truth eventually emerged. And when it did, that one little misunderstanding might cost him the only thing that had ever felt real. Before we jump into the story, leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Enjoy! Daniel Holloway stood in the living room, staring at the stack of thrifted clothes his maid had carefully laid out on the couch. The fabric was worn, the colors faded, and there was a faint smell of laundry detergent. But for tonight, it was all part of the plan. As Leo and Luca sat on the couch, watching with curiosity, Daniel tried to straighten out the old button-up shirt, tugging at the sleeves that felt slightly too short. He didn't want to look like the CEO of Holloway Enterprises tonight. He wanted to be just another dad, nothing more. "This is it," Daniel muttered, adjusting the collar for the third time. Just a night, just a dinner. His sons exchanged glances, clearly amused. Leo raised an eyebrow. "Do we really have to wear this stuff?" "It's part of the disguise," Daniel replied, tossing a pair of worn-out jeans to Leo. "Now please, just cooperate. We need to blend in tonight." Luca, always the more skeptical one, let out a sigh. "You sure this is going to work?" "I hope so," Daniel said with a half smile. As they pulled on the thrifted clothes, Daniel could feel the weight of the night ahead. It was more than just a dinner date. It was his chance to see if someone could truly like him for who he was, not the man with the money and the title. As the old car pulled into the driveway, he looked at his sons in the rearview mirror, hoping for just one night to be normal. Daniel Holloway pulled into the unassuming little diner his date had suggested, the kind of place with mismatched chairs and a faded mural of the town's history splashed across the back wall. It wasn't his usual scene, but that was the point. Leo and Luca, already unbuckled before the car fully stopped, pressed their faces to the glass, pointing at the chipped painting of a long-gone train station. "Dad, look! That guy's hat is floating!" Leo yelled, while Luca argued it was just bad art. Daniel shot them a look, the one that meant sit down and behave or no dessert, before ushering them inside. The hostess barely glanced up, waving them toward a booth near the window. Daniel adjusted his sleeves, suddenly hyper-aware of the wrinkles in his shirt. Then the door chimed again. Emma Clark stumbled in, breathless, her white blouse slightly untucked, her dark hair escaping its ponytail. She scanned the room, lips parted in quiet panic. Wrong place, wrong time, until her eyes locked with Daniel's. Something flickered in her expression. Relief? Surprise? She hurried over, swiping sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand. "God, sorry I'm late," she gasped, sliding into the seat across from him. She wasn't his date. He knew it the second she hesitated, the way her fingers tapped the table like she was counting seconds. Leo, ever the opportunist, snatched the last biscuit from the basket with a triumphant grin, only for Luca to let out an indignant squawk and lunge across the table. "It's mine," Luca hissed, fingers clawing at his brother's wrist. "You had two already," Leo shot back, twisting away like a feral raccoon guarding treasure. Daniel opened his mouth to intervene. Again, when Emma Clark leaned forward, her elbow resting lightly on the table, her voice cutting through the bickering like a cool breeze. "All right, gentlemen," she said, arching a single brow. "Here's the deal. Split it or I eat it myself." The boys froze, blinking at her in stunned silence. Then, miraculously, Leo broke the biscuit in half with an exaggerated sigh, shoving the slightly bigger piece toward Luca. Emma smirked, satisfied, and Daniel could only stare. She wasn't supposed to be here, wasn't the woman he'd been set up with, but she was playing the part effortlessly, like she belonged. When the waiter came, Daniel's hands betrayed him, fumbling his menu until it nearly slipped from his grip. Emma caught it without missing a beat, her fingers brushing his as she handed it back. Nervous? She teased, her voice low, just for him. He should have corrected her. Should have said, "You've got the wrong guy, the wrong table, the wrong life." But the way she looked at him, like she already knew the punchline and still wanted to hear the joke, left him breathless. So, instead, he smiled. Daniel Holloway watched as Emma Clark expertly navigated the chaos unfolding at their table. They had ordered some pasta for the boys, a shared plate of garlic bread, and a bottle of wine that felt too hopeful for a first date. But within minutes, Leo was drumming his fork against the table while Luca debated the merits of ketchup on everything except dessert. Emma didn't sigh or roll her eyes. Instead, she reached into her worn leather tote and pulled out an old laptop, its edges scuffed from use. "All right, gentlemen," she said, flipping it open with a practiced click. "You get one animal documentary. Choose wisely." The boys instantly stilled, crowding around the screen as David Attenborough's voice filled the space between them. Leo, mid-bite of garlic bread, suddenly piped up. "Dad, remember the huge skeleton at the museum? The one with the teeth?" Daniel's pulse spiked. No museum talk, no hints. He cut in smoothly, nudging the dessert menu toward Leo. "Hey, buddy, think they have that chocolate volcano thing here?" Emma laughed, soft, unguarded, as Luca immediately abandoned dinosaurs for sugar. Then she turned to Daniel, her gaze warm but searching. "You're good at that," she said, redirecting. "I've nannied enough to know it's an art." He should have come clean then, but the way she looked at him, like she saw him, the real him, not the carefully curated version from an app, left him mute. Emma shared stories from the library, how she once caught a toddler reading an economics textbook upside down, the time a patron asked for books on invisible motorcycles, her ongoing battle with the photocopier that seemed to have a personal grudge against her. As she spoke, Daniel noticed the way her hands danced through the air when she got excited, how she'd tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear when searching for the right word, the barely there crinkle at the corners of her eyes when she laughed at her own jokes. "Today," she said, leaning in conspiratorially, "a little girl told me I should marry the pizza delivery guy because he brings the good cheese." She mimicked the child's solemn expression perfectly, her fingers tapping an absent rhythm against her wine glass. But then Luca, sticky-fingered and grinning, offered Emma the last bite of his dessert, and she accepted it like it was a gift, her entire face softening in a way that made Daniel's chest ache. And in that moment, with Leo's head drooping sleepily against her arm, with Emma's quiet laugh still hanging in the air between them, Daniel let himself pretend. Just for tonight, just until the check came. Emma's heart still hummed as she stepped into the dimly lit apartment, the afterglow of the evening clinging to her like perfume. The single bulb in their tiny kitchen flickered as Sonia looked up from her laptop, eyebrows raised at Emma's flushed cheeks, an uncharacteristically bright smile. "So?" Sonia prompted, pushing a mug of tea toward her. Emma collapsed onto the couch, words tumbling out in a rush. It was perfect. The boys, Leo and Luca, they were these wild little hurricanes, but he knew exactly how to handle them without even raising his voice. And when Luca tried to steal my breadstick, he didn't scold him, just said, "Ask nicely or lose dessert privileges," and Sonia smirked. "Damn, Melvin's better with kids than I thought." Emma waved a hand, still floating. No, he wasn't some stiff corporate type. He had this quiet way about him, like he was used to chaos. And when Leo spilled his drink, he didn't even blink, just helped me clean it up like it was nothing. And his hands. She caught herself, laughing. God, listen to me. I sound ridiculous. You sound happy, Sonia said softly. And she was. Until the next morning. The message came at 7:03 a.m. Seriously? You ghost me? I waited at Vincenzo's for 45 minutes. Not cool. Emma's stomach dropped. Attached was a photo of a man she didn't recognize. Melvin, presumably, in a too-tight dress shirt, scowling in front of a restaurant that was decidedly not the cozy, crayon-covered place she'd been. Her fingers went cold. She had sat at the wrong table. The realization unspooled slowly, then all at once. That hadn't been Melvin. That had been someone else. A stranger. A man whose name she didn't even know. Daniel. She had heard Lucas say it, hadn't she? Dad, can I have more soda? But she hadn't thought, hadn't considered. Her breath hitched. She remembered the way he'd looked at her when she laughed, like he was trying to memorize the sound. The way his thumb had absently stroked Luca's back when the boy got too loud. The way he'd hesitated before saying goodbye, as if he wanted to ask for her number but didn't dare. And she hadn't even asked his name. Now, sitting on the edge of her bed, she clutched her phone uselessly. No last name, no contact, no way to find him except to return to that restaurant and hope. But what would she even say? Sorry, I accidentally crashed your family dinner, but can we do it again? Sonia appeared in the doorway, took one look at her face and sighed. Oh no, what happened? Emma swallowed. I think I just met the best man I've ever known, and I have no idea how to see him again. Daniel Holloway sat in his quiet office, the hum of the air conditioning the only sound. He'd been staring at the same financial report for 20 minutes, his mind replaying last night's accidental dinner. The way Emma, he still didn't know her name, had laughed when Leo spilled his juice. How she'd patiently listened to Luca's endless dinosaur facts. The warmth in her eyes when their fingers brushed passing the bread basket. He set down his pen. She'd mentioned working at the downtown library. That was all he had. No last name, no contact. Just the memory of her saying she worked with the children's books between Luca's interruptions. The Jefferson Public Library was quieter than he expected when he arrived at 3 p.m. The grand marble lobby echoed with each step of his dress shoes. At the information desk, an older librarian with silver-framed glasses looked up. "Can I help you?" she asked, fingers poised over her keyboard. "I'm looking for..." Daniel hesitated. "A librarian. She works with the children's collection. Dark hair, about this tall?" He gestured awkwardly. The librarian's eyes narrowed slightly. "We have several staff members who work in youth services. A name would help." "That's the problem," Daniel admitted, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know her last name. We met accidentally." Just then, a familiar laugh floated from behind a nearby bookshelf. Daniel turned to see Emma emerging from the stacks, arms laden with picture books. She wore a simple navy blouse and black slacks today, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. When she looked up and saw him, the books nearly slipped from her grasp. "You," she breathed, adjusting her grip on the books. A curious toddler peeked out from behind her legs. Daniel's mouth went dry. "Hi." The older librarian looked between them. "Emma, you know this gentleman?" Emma's cheeks flushed pink. "We met recently." She turned back to Daniel. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to apologize," he said, keeping his voice low in the quiet library, "for not telling you sooner about the mix-up." The toddler tugged on Emma's pants leg. She knelt to hand him a board book before standing again. "I should be apologizing to you," she said. "I basically crashed your family dinner." A corner of Daniel's mouth lifted. "Best mistake that's ever happened to me." Emma's lips twitched. but she glanced at the watching librarian. "Let's step outside for a moment?" The autumn air was crisp as they stood on the library steps. Emma crossed her arms against the chill. "How did you even find me?" "You mentioned working here, with the children's books." He hesitated. "I didn't catch your last name." "Clark," she said. "Emma Clark." She studied his face. "And you're just Daniel?" "Holloway," he supplied. "Daniel Holloway." For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of proper introductions hanging between them. "The boys haven't stopped talking about you," Daniel finally said. "Luca wants to show you his dinosaur book collection. Leo keeps asking when you're coming back for mac and cheese." Emma's serious expression softened. "I really liked them, both of them." She met his eyes. "And I'd like to get to know you too. The real you, without any accidental date pretenses." Daniel felt something loosen in his chest. "Dinner? Just us this time, unless ... He smiled. "Unless you want two very enthusiastic chaperones." Emma laughed, the sound carrying on the crisp air. "Let's start with just us." She pulled a library receipt from her pocket and scribbled on the back. "My number. No more stalking me at work, Mr. Holloway." He took the paper carefully, their fingers brushing. "I promise." As he walked away, Daniel realized he was still smiling. For the first time in years, a happy accident might have led him exactly where he needed to be. The restaurant was all soft candlelight and whispered conversations, a world away from crayons and spilled juice. Emma arrived in a simple emerald dress, the scent of bergamot and vanilla clinging to her skin like a secret. Daniel's driver had collected her, a gesture that felt less like showmanship and more like quiet care. He stood as she approached, pulling out her chair with an old-world grace that made her pulse flutter, their eyes held across the table. Not the frantic, assessing gaze of a blind date, but something deeper, a recognition. They talked freely, about books, about cities they'd loved, about the absurdity of modern dating apps. When she confessed Melvin's furious message, "He called me low effort because I suggested coffee instead of cocktails." Daniel's knuckles whitened on his wine glass. "His loss," he said, voice low. "Anyone who doesn't see the effort in showing up doesn't deserve you." Later, over shared tiramisu, he hesitated. "The boys," he traced the rim of his glass. "They've been asking if you'd visit. Leo drew you a picture. Luca practiced his best manners. It's a lot to ask." Emma smiled. "Try stopping me." The next day, his townhouse welcomed her with chaos and warmth. Leo thrust a crumpled drawing into her hands, a stick figure Emma with green scribbled hair. Luca presented a smooth river stone for luck. Lunch was Daniel's attempt at redemption. Sandwiches he'd stacked too high, fruit salad that leaned artistic, and the infamous plantains. "Dad tried to make them fancy," Leo announced, mouth full. He said, "We'll bring down the house," but then the oil went whoosh. Luca mimed an explosion, giggling. Daniel flushed, rubbing his neck. The smoke alarm may have sung along. Emma's laughter spilled out, bright and unguarded. She watched him, truly watched, as he patiently untangled Luca's straw wrapper, as he nodded gravely at Leo's story about a talking squirrel. This wasn't the polished CEO or the accidental date. This was a man trying. As afternoon light slanted through the windows, the energy shifted. Leo's chatter softened to yawns, his head drifting onto Emma's shoulder. Luca followed, curling against her other side like a warm, trusting weight. Daniel moved to lift them, but Emma shook her head. "Let them stay," she whispered. He watched her, this woman who'd walked into a wrong table and found a right life, cradling his sons as they slept. Cinnamon sunlight gilded her hair, her fingers gently smoothing Luca's rumpled shirt. In the quiet, Daniel felt the last of his walls crumble. "They trust you," he murmured, his voice thick. Emma looked up, her eyes holding his. I hope you do too. No masks, no disasters. Just this, real, imperfect, and utterly perfect. The low thrum of the bar felt like a held breath. Emma Clark slid onto the stool beside Daniel Holloway, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. His boys, her guarded walls, the fragile possibility neither dared name. Finally, Emma asked the quiet question burning in her chest. What happened to their mother? Daniel's gaze remained fixed on the amber liquid in his glass, his knuckles white around it. Not grief, Emma realized, but something harder, angrier. Claire. The name came out sharp, like shattering glass. She was present until she wasn't. He finally looked at her, his eyes shadowed with a profound bitterness. She liked the idea of me, the CEO, the penthouse, the lifestyle. The moment things got real, the boys needing more than a photo op, my company hitting turbulence, the shine wearing off the money. He took a harsh gulp of whiskey. She decided motherhood and for worse weren't in her contract. Packed a suitcase one Tuesday while Leo was at preschool and Luca was napping. Left a note about finding her happiness and a lawyer's contact info. The raw pain of abandonment twisted his features, a deep sadness mixed with simmering resentment. The mistakes, chasing that career, that wealth, thinking it was the foundation, the thing that would keep her happy, keep us solid. He choked on the words, the futility of it all constricting his throat. It hollowed me out, left me with 2 little boys asking where mommy went and a bank account bleeding dry from her settlement. I wanted someone to see me. Daniel. Not the wreckage Claire left, not the bank balance, just the man trying not to drown. The vulnerability in his confession hung heavy in the air. Without conscious thought, Emma reached out. Her fingers gently brushed a stray, dark strand of hair from his damp forehead, tucking it back with a tenderness that made him flinch. Then still. His eyes, wide and raw, searched hers. It will be okay, Daniel, she whispered, her voice a low, steady anchor in his storm. Her thumb lingered near his temple. But don't test me again. Before the surprise could fully register on his face, she leaned in and pressed a soft, unexpected kiss to his cheek. It was fleeting, a spark of warmth against the bar's chill, yet it carried the weight of understanding and a warning. She slipped off the stool. Fair, he breathed, a flicker of something like hope touching his lips as she walked away. Daniel stayed rooted long after the door closed, the ghost of her touch and her fierce, quiet strength clinging to him. The thing between them felt fragile, precious, something he suddenly fiercely wanted to protect, not from her, but for her. Hours later, curled on her worn sofa, Emma scrolled through benign emails. Then her screen erupted. A deluge of notifications, missed calls, texts cascading in a frantic waterfall. Dread pooled in her stomach. Her thumb trembled as she opened it. A grainy paparazzi shot. Her leaving Daniel's brownstone yesterday. Leo's small hand trustingly in hers. Liam grinning beside her. Daniel wasn't visible, but the Instagram caption was a poison dart. Daniel Holloway's latest charity case? Mystery Mom. Emma Clark. Exposed. Gold Digger 2.0 or desperate PR stunt. The comments were a vicious free-for-all. They mocked her thrift store jeans, dissected her washed-up expression, sneered at her junior designer salary. Then the detonation. A user unearthed a pixelated years-old photo from a club's dim interior. Slut Archives. Before playing house with Holloway, Emma Clark gyrated as Ember at Velvet Rouge. Guess she's still hunting CEOs, just upgraded her target. Stripper Ambitions, Ikaka Fake Wholesome. Another linked her LinkedIn with savage glee. From pole to payroll, Holloway's scraping the barrel. Wonder what sob story she sold him? The posts metastasized by the minute. Her carefully curated life, the quiet dignity clawed back book by book, ramen noodle by ramen noodle, was being ripped apart by strangers wielding the past she'd buried and despised. Her phone vibrated violently. Sonia. Emma stared at the name, the device buzzing like a trapped wasp against her palm. The ugliness she'd incinerated, the identity she'd shed blood to escape, was now trending entertainment. She tried to swipe answer, to grasp the lifeline of her friend's voice, but a cold, silent terror seized her vocal cords. No sound emerged. She watched the call die, dropped the phone as if it were radioactive, and stumbled to the bathroom. Sinking onto the cold lip of the tub, she stared into the mirror. The wide-eyed, pale reflection wasn't Emma Clark, graphic designer. It was Ember, stripped bare and served up for the world's contempt. The fragile piece she'd built with Daniel lay shattered, buried under an avalanche of cruel pixels. Daniel Holloway was reviewing quarterly projections when his assistant, pale-faced, slid a tablet across his desk. The headline screamed, "Holloway's secret stripper? Mystery Mom." Emma Clark's sordid past exposed. Beneath it, grainy club photos and vicious commentary dissected her life. A cold fury, sharpened by crushing guilt, seized him. He'd brought her into the spotlight. He'd failed to shield her. He left without a word, the boardroom buzzing behind him. By the time his car pulled up to her modest apartment building, a handful of paparazzi lurked like scavengers. He ignored them, taking the stairs 2 at a time. Her door was locked. He knocked, firm but not harsh. "Emma, it's Daniel." Silence. He pressed his forehead against the cool wood. "Emma, please, just talk. I'm not here about that. I just need to see you." After an eternity, the deadbolt clicked. The door opened barely 6 inches, secured by a chain. Emma stood there, hollow-eyed, wrapped in a faded robe. She looked shattered, stripped raw. "Go away, Daniel. Let me in, please." His voice was low, urgent. "Why?" Her whisper was frayed. "So you can see the mess up close?" The headlines got it right. Ember. That was me, Velvet Rouge. I danced. For money. Shame thickened every word. I know what that looks like in your world. Perfect CEO Daniel Holloway with the ex-stripper charity case. She tried to shut the door. He blocked it gently with his hand. "I don't care about that, Emma. I care about you." A brittle, humorless laugh escaped her. "Don't lie to make yourself feel noble. You run in circles where people like me are punchlines. We don't fit. We're stains." Her knuckles were white on the doorframe. "You think I wanted that life? You think I'm proud?" Her voice cracked, revealing the raw terror beneath the shame. "It was the only way, the only thing that paid enough, fast enough. My son, he was sick, cancer, the clinic bills. They were drowning us. Rent or chemo, food or scans, what choice did I have?" Daniel felt the revelation like a physical blow. The depth of her sacrifice, the agony behind the secret hit him with staggering force. "Emma? God, why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you?" Her eyes, finally meeting his, were pools of despair and defiance. "Tell the CEO who could buy my entire building with pocket change that I used to take my clothes off for men to save my child? How would that look? How would that sound? Men like you, men with power, money, options. You see single mothers like me as burdens, plagues, too much baggage, too much ugly truth." Her voice dropped to a broken whisper. "You would have looked at me differently, judged me, like everyone else eventually does." "Look at me," Daniel commanded, his own voice thick with emotion. He waited until her anguished gaze locked with his. I am looking at you differently. I see a woman who fought hell with her bare hands to save her child. I see courage that humbles me. I see strength I can barely comprehend." He took a shaky breath. "I see the woman I fell in love with, the woman who makes me feel things I haven't felt in a decade. That's who you are, not a punchline, not a stain. Emma." He reached a hand towards the gap in the door, not to force it, but an offering. "Let me help you now. Let me protect you, both of you. Trust me, please." For a heartbeat, he saw it. A flicker of desperate hope, a longing to believe him. Then, the walls slammed back down, reinforced by years of judgment and survival instinct. "No, Daniel." The chain rattled as she stepped back. "You can't protect us from this. Your help? It's gasoline on the fire. It drags you down into my mess. It puts a target on you and then on him. Her son. Her unspoken priority. Your world will judge you for being with me. Your board, your investors. They'll crucify you. And then what? You'll resent me. Or worse, you'll stay out of guilt. I won't be another obligation." "But I love you," he said, the words raw and true. "And that makes it worse," she whispered, tears finally spilling over. "Because it makes me want to believe you. It makes me want to be selfish. But I can't, not this time. My son, he comes first, always. And your world isn't safe for him, or for me, not anymore." She wiped her cheek roughly. "Go fix your company, Daniel. Protect your boys. Stay away from the circus. Stay clean." Before he could speak, the door clicked shut. The deadbolt slid home with a final hollow sound. Daniel stood frozen in the dim hallway, the echo of her sacrifice and her refusal ringing in his ears. He loved her. He knew her truth. And he was locked out. Not by a chain, but by the impenetrable fortress of a mother's fear and a survivor's ingrained certainty that trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. The fight wasn't against the paparazzi outside. It was against the ghosts of judgment that lived inside her. Ghosts he now knew wore the face of medical debt and impossible choices. Fixing this would require more than PR. It would require dismantling a lifetime of defense, brick by painful brick. And she wasn't ready to let him try.